Welcome into the neutral zone on Q30 Sports. I'm David Marr, joined by Matt Mugno. Matt, you were at the Harvard game last week. The Bobcats, now the number one team in the country after they beat the Crimson 4-1. What was your biggest takeaway from that matchup?
Well, David, it's nice to join you in this new year. I think the biggest takeaway in Hamden last weekend was you could feel the energy in the building. This was a landmark game that you and I have talked about for quite some time. I talked to Clever Streich, women's hockey beat reporter, on a preview before the break for both teams about how important this game was, and you could feel the energy in the building. I think the biggest takeaway for the Bobcats is how they seized this opportunity. They win the game 4-1 handily against their most difficult opponent on the schedule. Now, we'll talk in a little bit about how they have to face them in Cambridge, but in Hamden, they took care of business. They outshot them with 20 additional shots on net. They played really well in the defensive zone. And for a back and forth game, they were able to then, in the third period, lock it down. They got contributions all over the ice from De Jong, who shows up in big games. Colin Graf opened the scoring, and he's continued his dominant season. And Yanni Peretz, who was just named as a finalist for the Mike Richter Award, he shut things down in the third period when the Harvard Crimson brought their all. They have elite forwards and talent. Rand had mentioned that in the post game, and they know that this is a team that can knock them off in ECAC play. They took care of business in Hamden, and the energy was in the building. You knew it was an important game when you stepped foot into the rink.
Absolutely, Matt. Now let's talk about them moving forward. Obviously, this is a crucial stretch in their season. After they play against Long Island, they will have games coming up at Cornell, most likely UConn, a top 15 team coming to Hamden for CT Ice, unless the Bobcats lose to Sacred Heart. Then they have to go back to Cambridge the following week to play Harvard. Their next three tough games, potentially, all within the next 3 weeks. So the Bobcats, they've got a sizable lead in their conference now. But after playing at home, do you agree that their biggest challenge will be going on the road and proving to themselves they can not only win at home, but they can show you how good they are on the road?
I think with any given team, there may be an upset on the way. We may see Cornell knock them off in their home rink. We may see Harvard take a victory in Cambridge. But the most important thing for the Bobcats is how they lose those games, if they were to lose those games. If Cornell wins 5-0 on home ice and plays their defensive and gritty style, they're in for a little bit of trouble because there might be something wrong with their game. But I think what Rand has said in most of the post-game press conferences recently is that they've really stuck to their game, even through the period of time where he was away from the team coaching the United States World Juniors Championship team, who took home a bronze. So I think that it really comes down to how they play in those games if they lose them, and toughing out the rest of the schedule, because the expectation's high, David. David, speaking of expectation, based on this Harvard win, what is the expectation moving forward after a victory that's seen as prolific in the eyes of the team and the media?
I think the ceiling's high, Matt. I think the ceiling is high as probably a Frozen Four berth or potential win. I mean, we've seen this team strike quick. They've played such aggressive offense. They lead the ECAC in goals for. They lead the ECAC in goals against. And we'll just come down to those two road games. If they can beat Cornell on the road, which they tend to struggle with the Big Red in Lina Rink in Ithaca, and then go to Cambridge and beat Harvard, where they lost last year, they're in the driver's seat in the country. I mean, they are already the top team in the country after Denver lost to Alaska, but the ceiling's high. I mean, as we've seen the Bobcats, they are a complete team on all sides of the ice. They have the offense, they have the defense, they have the goaltending. They've got a great coach behind the bench. They're just a terrific all-around team, and they are certainly in for potentially a top 4 seed in the Frozen Four as it was right now, and potentially have the opportunity to host a regional game at Sacred Heart. Obviously, the regional being played in Bridgeport this year.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. If Quinnipiac can keep winning these games, they could lock up a top 4 seed and potentially earn a home regional in Bridgeport, which would be huge for the fan base to travel, get a nice home rink in Bridgeport, get a lot of home support. But big games coming up down the stretch. And we're going to be with you all season long for this men's hockey team as we head to the second half of the year with big games on the horizon with Cornell, the CT Ice tournament, and Harvard coming up on deck. For Matt Mugno, I'm David Marr, and this is the Neutral Zone for Q30 Sports.